one.
Oh, yeah. The NFL draft and rookies. Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, podcast off the rails already.
But there is not a chance in hell Justin Fields is finishing in the top 10.
You know what, Mikey? Shut it.
He wants
Why
it.
not?
You don't want the smoke.
He's Calvin Johnson. He's Calvin
Oh,
Johnson.
good.
Oh,
God.
my
Yes,
God.
yes, and yes.
What are we going to do with you?
It just, it adds a little extra flavor to the podcast.
I think you're disrespecting David Njoku.
Thank God
Yeah.
for Joe Flacco. That's all I can say. I'll help the owners. Don't draft Kadarius Toney.
I got to give the people what they want. I mean, come on. I'm going to milk it. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
I'll give you something to milk.
Let's rock and roll.
What's going on, MHA owners? It is August 13th. We're in the preseason now. We're going to be talking some wide receivers and some tight ends here on this podcast. And got a lot of news, including some breaking news we'll talk about. How are you fellas doing on this Tuesday evening?
Some of that breaking news I don't like. And but I'm ready to talk some tight ends. The equivalent to catchers in baseball. You just hope you throw darts at a dartboard and hope one sticks. But usually the tight end you draft on draft day, unless it's maybe Kelsey, you're probably not going to end up with that tight end at the end of the season.
Is that right, Miguel?
Not, I guess in Todd's case, yes. I mean, Todd likes to play the waiver wire tight end,
Who scored a touchdown this week?
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much. Yep, that sounds about right. A little Russian roulette. Let's go.
A Russian roulette. Who's got a gun? Let's take out Todd. All right. So let's get into it. Got a lot to talk about, including the news.
I don't understand what the news is. It's just like, hey, here's a bunch of you can't fix that happened that was horrible.
All right. Well, how about we just start with the breaking news? I saw today, maybe about a half hour, an hour ago, that the Steelers have a deal in place to acquire Brandon Ayuk. However, the 49ers are awaiting the wide receiver's decision. He could still sign with them on a long-term contract offer. So it really hasn't been decided yet, but it sounds like that if he wants to be traded to the Steelers, they have a place and they have a deal in place. If he wants to stay with the 49ers, there's a contract there for him. So there you go. Ayuk could be a Steeler by tomorrow, or he could stay with the 49ers. Mikey, who would you rather him be with?
I would rather him stay with the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean that's probably not the toughest question in the world. But if he ended up in Pittsburgh with those quarterbacks, I mean, is he the number one or is he number two?
That's a good question. Based on who's the quarterback, I think he would be number two. That's probably a hot take, but given Russell Wilson and I'm going to go with whoever's the guy that's more likely to catch his moon balls, and that's probably Pickens.
All right, so keep an eye on that. How about some bad news? Viking rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy has torn his meniscus and did so in his right knee, and that'll require surgery. They still don't know how bad the tear is to determine how long he'll be out, but if it's serious enough, he can miss the entire 2024 season. Todd, if this ends up being the case, you're the big J.J. McCarthy guy. Does that push Justin Jefferson lower in your rankings, or are you going to be fine with Sam Darnold and you won't move him at all?
At the beginning, I don't know. This is a tough one because what J.J. McCarthy did in that, and again, it was only one preseason game and how he performed. I don't know. This it's tricky because I'm a big J.J. McCarthy fan. And I'd have him starting over Darnold. I think it just still keeps Justin Jefferson, where he is in my rankings. I don't have him. I think he's he's staying right where I have him ranked. I think think I have him fifth, I believe, fifth or fourth. But really doesn't change anything for me.
Okay. Well, just for those who were hoping JJ McCarthy would lift him even more, because he did have that good preseason game, Todd had Jefferson fourth in his rankings, going to keep him there. I'll ask Todd about this as well. Lions star running back Jahmyr Gibbs pulled a hamstring, I believe yesterday in practice, or maybe 2 days ago. Todd, you're pretty much the Jahmyr Gibbs guy. You had him higher ranked than the rest of us. Does this bother you at all?
Fantasy football is so much fun. It hasn't even started yet. It's great. Well, here's the thing. Obviously, I know hamstrings are tricky because those things can linger a lot, and if you don't watch it and you kind of force it, you're playing with fire there. It's really going to depend on if the Lions at this point now. I mean, depending on however the diagnosis is and they do further testing or whatever the case may be, if they shut him down until week 1, I'm obviously okay with that. That's great. And if the hamstring heals up and they say he's all ready to go, for week 1, no setbacks, no, they're not gonna, put him on a pitch count, anything like that. They're just normal. Then yes, I'm still going to draft him, with my first pick. But obviously, if there is any kind of setbacks and he's not ready for week 1, or they say like, hey, we might put him on, a little bit of a pitch count. And obviously we don't know what that is right now. I mean, obviously we're still in the early stages of the situation, but if they're like, hey, and then the worst, DEFCON 3, if the worst case scenario, if you're like, well, he's not going to be ready for week 1, I might have to change my tune a little bit.
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on Jahmyr Gibbs, folks. Could ruin Todd's draft right out of the gate. Speaking of hamstrings, Packers rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd is dealing with the same thing as Gibbs, and he's been shut down for the time being. So for those worried about Josh Jacobs having to deal with some competition, Lloyd will have to earn his way. He's not going to be able to get reps and keep pace, and it looks like Jacobs could be the man that gets all the run until Lloyd finally returns from the hamstring injury. Some more running back news. How about more rookie running back news? And Tyrone Tracy Jr. from the New York Football Giants, who suffered a low ankle sprain and will be sidelined for an undetermined amount of time. I don't know how serious an ankle sprain can get, but he was carted off the practice field and his ankle was put in an air cast and then taken to a local medical facility. I just wrote it that way because some of you WWE fans may know what that means. But yeah, it sounds like Tyrone Tracy may not be playing for a while. It's still early in determining how long he's going to miss. But anytime you put an air cast on, that's not good. So he was getting some run in practice. He would look like he was probably going to be the number 2 behind Devin Singletary. So maybe that opens things up for more carries for the starting running back for the Giants. One thing I forgot to mention on last week's show as I was going through the notes is I forgot to mention that Christian McCaffrey is dealing with a calf issue, and he's been shut down and will not play in any preseason games. And that's probably not super incredible news or anything, but he may not. I don't know when he's going to take a snap, maybe until the final week before the season starts, and that's not in any preseason games. So keep an eye on Christian McCaffrey, Mikey. If he gets no reps, and I know you're not going to be able to draft him by any stretch, but should owners be worried about CMC if he does not take a snap until the first game of the season?
The only worry is that it's similar to the Gibbs thing where they're just kind of keeping quiet as to what the severity is of it. He's just not practicing. Nobody really knows too much about what's going on. And in a way, I kind of like that because it's going to force people to kind of take chances.
Panic. Yeah, I think so, because I mean, we saw what happened, and I don't know if it's the same exact calf issue as Joe Burrow, but we saw how that kind of hampered him. Like, he couldn't run at all on his calf issue. He was not running the ball. He couldn't get away from pass rushers, and it really kind of messed his season up. So yeah, Christian McCaffrey, that's a big name as well. And lastly, unless you guys have something else, Jamar Chase officially not at practice. Now he's been holding out, looking for a restructured contract, but he had been at practice, not doing anything, but he was at least there. But today he did not show up for training camp. So two of the top receivers, and Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb, wanting more money. And so we'll have to wait and see how all that plays out. Any other news, or should we finish up some wide receiver talk?
Let's finish it up.
All right. Well, we kind of left off with this question. I asked you guys where you had Marvin Harrison Jr. ranked. Now, we talked about some of our thoughts about Marvin Harrison in the rookie episodes. You can always go back and check that out. But, I didn't have you guys have rankings at the time. So let's talk about where you guys have him ranked. Mikey, where do you have Marvin Harrison Jr. ranked?
I believe I had him ranked 9th.
That is correct. Then I'm assuming that hasn't changed at all.
No, it hasn't changed. I haven't, since we last spoke, I haven't done a lot of in-depth work on Mr. Marvin Harrison Jr.
Now, does anybody know if he got into the game in the preseason game last week?
They said he played 3 snaps, so not a whole lot where it, where it was newsworthy or anything like that popped out. So
9th. You have him 9th. Todd has him 9th. I am the lowest on him with 16. We did between the three of us, a mock draft on ESPN. Now, anytime we do a mock draft, it's tough because of our quarterback situation. No one else really does a point per completion league, so take that for what it's worth. But Mikey, you drafted Marvin Harrison, I believe, in that second round. Some of your thoughts in terms of how that felt and how, when you looked back on your team, did you feel good about it? Now, if Marvin Harrison was your number 2 receiver, is that right?
Number 2, yeah.
So how did you feel about that?
I mean, I didn't hate it. I don't think in a real draft it's something that I would actually do. Like, I feel like 9, where I have him at, is probably more of his ceiling. And so there's a danger with a rookie, like, if you're going to take somebody like that with one of your top 2 picks, they better hit that ceiling. Otherwise, I mean, it's just an overdraft. So, I mean, there's some scary parts of that. I mean, I think he has all the talent, the physical tools, the speed, the hands, the genetics, anything you want to give him. And he's going to be the number 1 target, I feel like, in Arizona. If Kyler Murray stays healthy, I think the sky's the limit. But that's why I had him 9th. But I don't feel like I would be willing to be the one to take that risk in our draft. Because like I said, I mean, that's a ceiling, and it's just tough with a rookie.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's why I have him 16th. I'm not willing to take that chance. There are other receivers that are going in the second round I prefer to have. You're right, Kyler Murray, if he's 100% healthy and he can get it to Marvin Harrison on a regular basis, I mean, we've seen what he's been able to do. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins. Todd, Marvin Harrison, number 9. You feel good about that?
Sure do. I mean, I think, again, I'll go with another bold prediction or just another outrageous thing that I always say, but Marvin Harrison's going to be your rookie of the year. I think he's going to be. And obviously I know it usually goes to quarterbacks. It's it's rarity, but I think Harrison is that special. I think he's going to be the rookie of the year in football. So I think he's going to be that. He's going to be that special, just among rookies.
Mikey, I'm sorry. Last thing about Harrison, Mikey, what kind of number, if he goes 9th overall amongst wide receivers, and I'm assuming that's more like middle of the second round, what kind of numbers do you think he needs to have for it to be justified?
I think that he needs to have at least like 80 catches plus. He needs to put up somewhere in the range of 1,200 yards and at least get to double-digit touchdowns.
I feel like that's asking a lot but if everything goes right, he's got the talent. He is someone that I wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe I would say I'd be surprised if he put up those type of numbers. But yeah,
The touchdowns is always
so
the hard part.
yeah, it's always fluky, and if things are going well, like we've seen Arizona with Murray put up decent point totals in games. But McBride is there, and Connor's there. We'll see if Benson does anything. But I mean, he's the number one guy with a good quarterback. It'll be interesting to see. Let's keep going. Todd, you want to say something real quick?
I was just going to just say this kind of reminds me a little bit like Marvin Harrison could put up number. Now, obviously, the hype wasn't as much with this this Arizona wide receiver a long time ago, but Anquan Bolden, obviously, Anquan Bolden wasn't drafted as high, but he kind of maybe came out of nowhere and put up really good rookie numbers and won Rookie of the Year. So, I mean, that was 2001, I think it was, or somewhere around there. So I'm just looking at that comparison of, of Arizona wide receiver like that. But that's going way back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2003, and he was the second round pick, 54th overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, sure, he had a great first. He had 101 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which is amazing for a rookie a wide receiver. Excuse me. Okay, we'll start with Mikey this time. I asked you guys to talk about a rebound for one of these guys who a couple of years ago were great. Last year took a step back. So Mikey, Devonta Smith. I always say Devonta. It's Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Christian Kirk. Any one of those guys you want to talk about?
Sure. I mean, I'll talk about DK Metcalf. I think the opportunity is better in general for Seattle's receivers. With Pete Carroll out of there, I think it's actually helpful to this offense. Seattle played at the slowest pace. I mean, just for years, like they would run the least amount of plays. And it was a team that was so just like hell bent on, winning low scoring games. And I know they brought in a defensive coach in Mike McDonald. So maybe they stay that way. I just think with Carroll out of there, maybe it changes up things a little bit. I think Geno Smith, I would look for a bounce back year from him as well.
That's saying a lot because Mikey was not a Geno Smith guy 1 year ago.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think DK Metcalf's always had like big playability.
He's good, right? He's a good wide receiver.
He is. And so for him, like, it's just more, him getting more opportunities, I think. And I think this is a good test and a good chance that this could happen this year.
And he's been around forever, but he's only 26 years old. And he's a touchdown guy. He's always like highly targeted in the red zone. He was 5th last year, despite the slow offense. And so you hope that Ryan Grubb guy from University of Washington, they're talking about more 3 wide receiver sets and opening up the offense a little bit. So I really hope so because I love watching him play. I was obviously super high on him last year, and he ended up finishing 24th. He still had 8 touchdowns, but his receptions were so low and his targets were so low. So I'm excited to see him kind of jump back up into the top 10. Todd, how about Christian Kirk or Devontae Smith?
Talk about Devonta Smith. Obviously, last year I had him, and
and then you traded him.
Yeah, I traded him, and so obviously, cause because AJ Brown, first part of the season was looking like an MVP type can. He was just putting up touchdowns left and right, and Jalen Hurts was force feeding the football, and it's like, come on, Devonta Smith is there, let's go, and Devonta Smith had some good weeks for me as well, but it is gonna be interesting. I think with Saquon Barkley coming into play now, obviously they use Devonta Smith a lot for, those screen passes because Devonta Smith was more of the he was more of the speedster of the wide receivers. AJ Brown was more of the physical wide receiver, and so forth. But with Devonta Smith, I think he might have a rebound. I mean, I have him ranked 26th.
Doesn't sound like a rebound. He finished 22nd
No, it's
last
not
year.
great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I have DK Metcalf ranked higher in my rankings, but
Yeah.
but Devonta Smith is still in a great offense. I say it every single year. I mean, who is which quarterback, which wide receiver, who is your quarterback you're attached to? And Jalen Hurts, pretty good quarterback. So that helps it out a lot, and you just hope gets a little bit more than he did last year. I mean, because Devonta Smith definitely, when I traded him to you, Eric, he kind of fell off a little bit. Didn't have didn't have a lot of double digit type weeks like you were hoping when I traded him to you. But obviously the offense kind of changed a little bit as well. Jalen Hurts ran a little bit more too as well. So that's little factors there. So we'll see but I think maybe Devonta Smith has a bounce back.
I'll talk about Christian Kirk real quick. He was 12th just 2 years ago, and then finished 48th. And of course, Trevor Lawrence just handing the ball over to the defense at a ridiculous rate didn't help. Ridley and Kirk were pretty close to one another at the beginning of the season, and then Kirk got hurt. Just played in 12 games, 57 receptions, just 3 touchdowns. He did have 3 games with 10 or more targets, 2 games with 100 plus yards in those limited action, but can he have a rebound year? With Ridley gone, that helps. He's familiar with the offense. Obviously, he already has a rapport with Mr. Trevor Lawrence, and you have guys like Gabe Davis, who's not a big target guy. You don't know what you're going to get from a rookie, and Brian Thomas Jr., even though it was a first-round pick. Evan Ingram's still there. And so finishing 48th, I think it's easy to say he'll be better just because he was hurt. But can he get back to 12th? That might be asking a little bit too much. But if he can get into the top 15, he's a talented player. That's why we had that board bet last year. I thought he was better than Ridley. But it's just unfortunately getting hurt didn't help at all. So if he would have finished the season based on what he did at the beginning of the year, he would have had 94 receptions and close to 1,300 yards and something like 6 touchdowns. So if he can get to that this year, I think that'd be incredibly beneficial. And something I'm looking at that later stage. I mean, I have him 24th currently, so I don't have him up in the 12th type of area. I think that might be asking too much because maybe Trevor Lawrence isn't the quarterback we all thought he may be. So we'll just have to wait and see.
So quickly, just on Christian Kirk, and take this for what it's worth. It's small sample size. It's just something I'm going to look out for in their next preseason game. In the first preseason game, Christian Kirk was only on the field in 3 wide receiver sets because they were playing him in the slot and they were playing the rookie Thomas and Gabe Davis on the outside.
Okay.
And so those 2 were getting reps. So, it doesn't mean anything bad, but it just could mean that because he is playing the slot, that maybe he's on the field less.
Yeah, that would definitely hurt him. They want to put him in the best spot to succeed, and then for them, it's about NFL wins, not fantasy football wins. So definitely, yeah, that's a good way to catch that, Miguel. Next wide receiver question here. I told you guys to rank these sophomores: Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. Excuse me, Mikey. Do you want to go ahead and take that and maybe talk about one of them?
Yeah. So I actually have Flowers the top of those, but I actually want to talk about Rashee Rice because this seems relevant given the injury to Hollywood Brown over the weekend, which I don't know if we talked about.
I did not mention. I forgot. I put it in my notes on my phone, but did not bring that up. So he ended up having a really serious injury where I believe it was at his collarbone, but it was more of like the way it was broken. It was going to hit some major areas, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he was in the hospital. And so that may affect him. And I'll look this up while Mikey talked about Rashee Rice. But yeah, that definitely opens things up if Rice is still around and not dealing with off the field stuff.
Yeah, and I had Rice listed as 29th in my rankings last year. He finished in the top 25. I honestly don't think the off the field stuff is going to affect him. I mean, his court date, I don't think it's until late in the season. Usually these type of things tend to wait until after the season. So, I mean, he proved at the end of last year and in the playoffs that he was a guy that Mahomes felt like he could count on. If Hollywood Brown is going to miss some time with this, clavicle injury, I think for me it's going to mean that I'm going to bump up Rashee Rice a little bit in my rankings because I think he's going to have a pretty good year.
So news as of 8 hours ago, Hollywood Brown now expected to miss up to 6 weeks after sternoclavicular injury. So yeah, that's going to be quite a bit of time. And so for Sheet Rice is there. Obviously, Kelsey's in the mix, and for those who like Pacheco, he's still in the mix. So Rashee Rice could be flying up all of our rankings as we get closer to the season. Todd, out of Rice, Reed, Flowers, and Addison, who was your top guy? And feel free to talk about anybody. And I'm going to guess you're going to talk about Jaden Reed.
Yes, I am. Now I
You
have
love
him.
him. Love him.
Hey, yeah, love him. Now I have Jaden Reed 27 and
Well, maybe don't
Flowers.
love him after all.
Yeah, I do. It's just more about, I'm not trying to hype it up too much because then people want to draft it. I'm just kidding.
Attaboy. There you go.
Yeah,
Deceiving the public.
Exactly. Hey, I'm a champion now. Gotta use everything in my arsenal here. Okay, so the thing I like about Jaden Reed is obviously what Jordan Love did last year, and obviously I know that offense. Their wide receiver depth is a little bit deeper, but I think Jaden Reed. I think he might have a breakout year. I think he'll have at least 80 receptions, 800 yards receiving, and at least 10 touchdowns. I think he might be Jordan Love's number one target, and I hope I can draft him because that would be phenomenal. 10 touchdowns, that would be great, and 80 receptions. Yeah, I like it.
If that's the case, you probably need to move him up in your rankings. I don't think a guy that's ranked 27th is going to put up those type of numbers.
Keeping it in the wins a little bit there.
Were you going to say that same thing, Miguel?
Well, so the 10 touchdowns not outrageous given that he had 8 last year. My thing with it is there's a lot of mouths to feed.
Agree.
In Green Bay, for him to be able to pull those type of numbers, and this is all whether or not Christian Watson is healthy, because if he is, then Jaden Reed, at least to start out, is probably the third, but with Dubs and Christian Watson being starters on the outside, I would find it hard for him to get there. But Watson goes down again, then you never know.
Yeah, I just think I think with Reed you can move him around the field a little bit more as well. So I think that might get him more, that might get him more play too as well. But yeah, I agree with you in that sense that yes, Watson, if Watson's healthy, that definitely, cuts into Reed's production a little bit. But I just think Reed will have a breakout year, and I think they'll find every way possible to get him the football as well. And again, too, it helps that Jordan Love, had the season he had, the second half of the year, and it just helps. So that's why, even though, yes, I have him 27th, and I, having him, almost having 1,000 yards receiving and, 80 to 90, receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. Yeah, I should have him ranked higher, but temper expectations just a little bit, and have the high expectations, but not have him ranked too high, and then swoop in and have him on the Butterfingers. There you go.
So yeah, owners, don't tell anybody. Don't let anybody know that Todd's deliberately throwing the guy low in the rankings so he can draft him. He doesn't want anybody to know.
Yep. I don't want anybody to know.
Oh, man. I'll talk about Zay Flowers really quickly here. We're about over half an hour. I want to get to these tight ends, but Zay Flowers, he finished 28th last year. shown bursts of some great games. He had 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games, so maybe finally kind of building that rapport with Lamar Jackson. This competition, of course, Mark Andrews in the mix when he's healthy. Rashad Bateman, I keep hearing. I feel like I've been hearing about how good Rashad Bateman is in preseason for the past like 4 years, and he's never done anything in the regular season, so I'm not going to take that at all with what they're trying to say. Nelson Aguilar, so he is the guy with him and Andrews, and Derrick Henry's not going to catch passes, so you may see Flowers if he feels comfortable and Lamar Jackson believes and trusts what he's going to do. His receptions could go up. Now it's not going to be massive upside. He's not going to throw Lamar Jackson in that offense. They're not going to throw 150 times to him. That's just not what they do. But if you can get somewhere between 75 and 80 receptions, get close to 900 yards, and maybe bump those 5 touchdowns to 7 or 8, it's going to move him up a little bit and be fantasy worthy. He had 24% target share. I feel like that only is going to improve. And obviously Andrews was out with some injuries, so maybe that kind of affected the 24%. But they're a good offense, and they're going to score some touchdowns. It may be more rushing than passing, but I don't think Zay Flowers is someone to ignore. And when in an offense that likes to run first, because I thought he played really well at times. He also had a rushing touchdown with 56 yards rushing, so he's also kind of in that mix as well. I'm going to ask one more wide receiver question, and we're going to go to tight ends. I told you guys to give me some thoughts on these big play wide receivers. George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Christian Watson, and Cortland Sutton. Todd, I'll let you go first. Who do you want to talk about amongst those 4?
I'll talk about Christian Watson. I'll talk about Amari Cooper. And again, this is all predicated all on Deshaun Watson. We talk about that every single year now with Deshaun Watson since he came to Cleveland. Can Amari Cooper be the wide receiver that he was, even when he was in Dallas or so forth? So he only had 5 touchdowns last year. Now, obviously, that was Joe Flacco throwing the football. So obviously, Joe Flacco threw it to David Njoku a lot, which was great. Not going to complain there. But I think this year, he obviously still the number one. But I think he's gonna. I think the projections. I was just looking at the projections for what ESPN had: 1,000 yard, almost 1,043 yards receiving, only 5 touchdowns. I think that's where he's gonna kind of end up here. Let me see where I had him ranked in my rankings. 29th. So yeah. So there you go. That says it right there. I just don't think. Obviously he's still number 1. He's going to get all the volume, but just not I'm just not a fan. Just because it's going to depend on what Deshaun Watson can stay healthy. That's always the key. That's the key. If Deshaun Watson stays healthy, then Amari Cooper, then he'll do more than what I have him ranked at 29th. But if Deshaun Watson gets hurt, okay. Who's going to be who's going to throw him the football? Because every different quarterback is different and what they do. So that's what I think about Amari Cooper.
Mikey, Amari Cooper, I feel like is quarterback proof. I don't think it matters. You're higher than the rest of us, but 2 years ago with Cleveland, he had 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's just consistent.
Just good.
He's the guy that you don't really want to draft because he's not there. He doesn't have upside to him, but he doesn't. So you're just you know what you're going to get out of him. He's just he's a safe guy. He fits you perfectly, Eric. He's just that type of guy that is going to get you his same numbers year after year after year, but has no upside.
Listen here, buddy. I picked Jonathan Taylor. All right. Just kidding. All right. One thing about Cooper, he had a career high with 17.4 yards per reception, which is huge. That's why he had 72 receptions, but 1,200 yards. It's because he was able to use these big throws or even those yards after the catch really helped them out. And so I have him 26th, but he's a guy we always just kind of like, oh, he doesn't have the biggest upside, but he's going to give you what you figure you're going to get from him, which isn't always sexy, but that's okay. You need production, and that's what matters the most. Mikey, out of those guys, Pickens, Watson, or Sutton?
So, I had Pickens, Sutton, Watson pretty close in rankings.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to go just because I want to talk about him. I'll talk about Sutton real quick. I think Cortland Sutton is going to change as a wide receiver this year. He's always been the type of guy where numbers wise, he had a pretty good yards per catch. His receiving total was down, but he could get yards, and like last year he busted out with 10 touchdowns. This year, I think it's a little bit different. I think his touchdowns are going to go down, but I think he's going to become a more efficient receiver, that he'll have more catches and more overall yards on the season, because I feel like he is a good receiver. He's now years removed from his injury. And now, if Bo Nix is going to be the quarterback.
Yeah. Who was right?
He'll be able to catch passes when he's actually open, as opposed to being the guy that when everything goes wrong and you just throw it up and he has to try and make a play, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, I mean, that was most of his highlights, was Russell Wilson running around and happening to find him in the end zone.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be less of that and more of him catching these 10-yard passes and 15-yard passes. So he'll have more like volume, but I don't think he'll hit that 10 touchdown ceiling that he hit last year.
Todd, you wanted to say something?
I was gonna say, who was right about Bo Nix? Who was right? Who's gonna be the week one?
Let's calm down.
Who's gonna be the week one starter? I know.
Calm down.
I know. It just feels nice sometimes. It's like when I stick to my guns. I say, hey, this is gonna be the guy. And like you said, Mikey, you were like, you know what? You said you've seen enough, and Todd might be right. He might be he might be the week one starter. I'm just saying, it's feels nice. But I'll say this, because obviously
his guns, but how many times does he shoot himself?
Yeah, I shoot myself a lot. But I'll just say this, but the fact of the matter is, when I saw a couple things, he got the ball out
quick, because we're not here talking about quarterbacks.
Sorry. He got the ball out quick to Sutton. Got the ball out quick. He moved his feet. That's all I got to say. Russell Wilson didn't do any of that.
All right. I'll quickly talk about George Pickens, and I don't know if things changed. That's something I haven't had a chance to think about with Ayuk possibly in the mix. I don't expect this Pittsburgh offense to be stellar. Pickens finished 34th, and you could complain about the quarterbacks he had tossing him the ball. I feel like he passes the eye test as a good wide receiver. But guess who's in Pittsburgh? Good old Arthur Smith, and they're not going to try to give him 100 catches, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. It's just not what they do. He doesn't have much in terms of competition before Ayuk with Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin III. Pat Freiermuth's still in the mix, but he's been dealing with injuries, and I don't know if he's all the way back yet. But I might have to move George Pickens down from my 25th. I like when I see his highlights are phenomenal, but can he get to a point where he's not splitting the limited opportunities that are going to be kind of founded with that offense in Pittsburgh? So I'm not super high on him. If he was on a different team, obviously it would be great to have him shoot up my rankings, but that's the reality. We'll have to wait and see if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, whoever it is going to be, can put up fantasy-worthy points. I don't know. I don't feel great, but I have him 25th at the moment.
You should just imagine, just for a second, like in your head, close your eyes and imagine Justin Fields and Russell Wilson on Sunday watching them play. Ugh. And then decide if you want George Pickens on your team.
I'll change the channel. That's what I'm trying to watch Pittsburgh games. Maybe for Najee Harris if he ends up on my team, but yeah, definitely not. Okay, let's get into some tight end talk. We're about 43 minutes, so we'll go through these pretty quick here. Your number one tight ends, folks. Sam Laporta was the number one tight end from last season. He usurped. Is that the right word? Usurped. Travis Kelce. I don't know if he went out of his way like House of the Dragon and all that to become number one, but he had a great season as a rookie, even no less. He had 86 receptions in 17 games played, 120 targets, almost 900 yards, 10 TDs. He finished fifth amongst all tight ends in targets. I am the only one that has Sam Laporta still as this number one tight end. Mikey and Todd both have Travis Kelce. Mikey, I'll let you go first. You can either talk about Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce. We all have them 1-2, so we're right there. But tell me why you have Kelce over Sam Laporta. Is it more about Kelce doing what he's going to do, or is it more Sam Laporta going to be regressing in touchdowns? Or both?
I mean, that would be the thing. I mean, when you look at it, like Kelce on averaged more targets, more receptions, more yards than Laporta did. But Laporta had the edge on touchdowns. And I mean, part of it was that Kelce was a little bit banged up. I know people are going to say, well, he's getting older and
34 years old.
Yeah, but I think the fact that they've won 2 championships in a row and now we're going for the thing that no one else has done, that third, I think it's going to keep him highly motivated, that team highly motivated. And yeah, I mean, Laporta's to me has got to prove that once again.
Don't you want some fresh legs, Miguel?
See, and I knew that's the thing everybody wants to see, but
because I mean, you talk about Travis Kelce being old, but he's also like playoff old. I mean, they go to the playoffs every year, deep playoff runs every year. I mean, his legs got to be feeling healthy or being heavy these days. I don't know, maybe healthy, but heavy at least.
This is something, like I said, that no team has ever done. So you best believe they are going to do everything in their power to make sure that they get this thing completed, as much as I don't want them to. And so, I mean, I think you're going to see a big year out of Kelce this year.
No, don't say that. I don't want to see that.
Well, you know what he does.
I got to see his girlfriend on TV. I'm just messing. Go ahead, Todd.
I was just gonna say, you know how he overcomes all that.
No, how?
He just shakes it off. Shake.
Man, I hate you so much.
I know you do, but I couldn't resist. That was I had my George Costanza moment right there. I had to do it.
No, you didn't. Did you want to say anything about Kelce or Sam Laporta?
Obviously Travis Kelce. Just I mean, he's attached to Patrick Mahomes. It's like the number one target. He just keeps on going. Laporta, obviously, that offense is just as high powered as the Chiefs is. So I mean, obviously, you can't go wrong with either drafting either one of them. Obviously, I think with Kelce, you still have to draft in the first round. Laporta, maybe.
I don't think so.
What?
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't even know if Sam Laporta goes in the first round.
That's not a hot take.
Well, no, I'm saying. Laporta, I know Laporta doesn't go in the first round. I know that, but Kelce, if you want Kelce, I think you'd have to draft Kelce in the first round. I don't think.
You think that's true, Miguel?
I don't think that's true.
You have him first, so maybe you have a better idea. But would it be a shock if he went in the first round in our league this year?
It would be. I would be shocked. Yeah, I mean, after him going, early like he did last year, and then immediately getting hurt. Like, I haven't seen. A lot of people will look at magazines or they'll listen to our podcast or they'll, do their own rankings, whatever. I would be amazed to see. I don't think I've seen publication or anything that has him listed as a first round pick. So I'd be shocked to see him go in the first round.
Mikey, you just mentioned, I don't want to spend too much time on Kelce, but you just mentioned you figure he's in for a big year. If he's in for a big year, does that mean he should be a first round pick? If he gets back to Travis Kelce from a couple years ago where he's double digits and has 2 years ago, 110 receptions, almost 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns. I would want that as my tight end in the first round, but I don't know if you believe that's the type of numbers he's going to get to.
Eric, don't make me say things, okay? See, I'm the type of guy that I look at, there was a guy who everybody thought was a first-round pick, then he goes, and then he had a little bit of an off season, and now everybody forgets about him, and now he comes back to where he was. Stop trying to make me say things.
Oh man, I have to try something here. Let's let's talk about Mark Andrews just briefly. Mikey's got him third. I've got him fourth. Todd's got him fifth. So relatively in the same realm. He finished 13th one season ago. He's 28 years old. He missed 7 games. It seems like injuries, kind of dealing with something every year. But when he's out on the field, he's tremendous. So Todd, give me some of your thoughts on Mark Andrews and what are you expecting out of him? And like his competition, we mentioned when we were talking about Zay Flowers, it's him, Rashad Bateman, and if they go Justice Hill as the third down back to catch passes out of the backfield, because you're not going to get a lot of that from Derrick Henry. But do you have high hopes for Mark Andrews this season?
Yes, I do. Mark Andrews still, I think, is Lamar Jackson's safety blanket. Still one of the best tight ends in the league. Still gets a lot of volume. Last year he had 6 touchdowns. I think he at least gets. I think he gets double digits. I think he gets 10 touchdowns, maybe even 11 touchdowns this year. So and with Mark Andrews, it's always with him. It's the injury concerns too as well, because there's been plenty of times where he's gotten hurt or he's gotten hurt, but missed a few games, but come back and hasn't had the same production after getting hurt. So, but Mark Andrews still, I think, is obviously besides Lamar Jackson is my mind I'd say the second best, most important player on that offense for the Ravens.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's okay. I mean, he's still a really good player. Andrews has not had double-digit touchdowns since his second year in the league. He's had 6 last year, 5 the previous year, and 9 before that. But what I just want to see from Andrews is play 14 to 16 games at the very least and just be consistent. I don't. There was so many times because I think I had him 2 years ago, and he would just like leave the game early. He was always kind of beat up. It was hard because like he was always ready to play the next game, but he was never 100% healthy to play the next game. So he would just not be super consistent. But I mean, his targets are always pretty good. There's so much to like about him. Any quick thoughts, Mikey, before we move on?
Well, I am interested to see what this play action game for the Ravens looks like. And because I just have the feeling that Andrews is going to be running free all the time because teams are not going to know what to do now, having to deal with, is Lamar Jackson going to run? Derrick Henry's back there now.
Yeah.
And I feel like when they run play action, like Andrews is just going to be freaking wide open in the middle of the field like all the time.
Here's my quick concern is Isaiah Likely is a good tight end. And so I feel like there could be a situation where they rest Andrews or give Likely more to keep Andrews. I mean, this is a team vying for the Super Bowl, and they want Andrews for the playoffs. And so does Isaiah Likely come in and steal away snaps? I don't know if that's true. I mean, we haven't seen anything in the preseason that says that. But I mean, that's something that's got to be on their minds because it's just every year with Andrews.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, and I don't see any reason why they can't use them both a lot of the time because you mentioned, other than Zay Flowers, they pretty much don't have any reason to play 3 wide.
Correct.
Like, what? So you can get Nelson Aguilar on the field all the time? There's no point. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly think both of them can be on the field a lot.
But can Lamar Jackson throw enough to warrant that? I don't know. I mean, I think he's capable of. He actually had a career high 457 attempts last year, but just had 24 touchdowns. He had 36 way back in 2019, but he's good. I don't think any of us are just debating that Andrews can't go out there and produce. He just needs to stay healthy. Big part of the offense. Here's a guy that I want to talk about. We have like 7 minutes in the show, so we may pick the pace up here a little bit. But Trey McBride, talk about another. I think he was actually in his second year, right? He wasn't a rookie last year. Is that correct?
Yes, I think he was in his second year.
No, he was a rookie.
Was he a
He's
rookie
a
last
rookie?
year? Okay, thank you. I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
So this rookie, just like Laporta, comes in with no one. They had no one for Murray to throw the ball to, so he was the guy, and he was productive. He didn't have a lot of touchdowns because Murray came in kind of later in the season, dealing with his his recovery from that ACL. But 81 receptions on 106 targets. That's pretty efficient. He had 12 games with 5+ targets, 2 games with 10+ targets. Just imagine if he's going to get better. Just imagine if Marvin Harrison is there to take away some of the double teams because they had no one else last year, at least on the receiving end of things. Mikey, how good you have McBride lower than any of us, so you may not be feeling McBride this season. So what makes you think that McBride? And he finished 8th last year, so it's one spot behind what he did last year. But what are your thoughts here on the Arizona Cardinals starting tight end?
Yeah, I don't think I'm down on him. I still have him in the top 10. I just don't put him like you guys had him really high. And
Well, I think everybody's got him high. I think everybody is feeling Trey McBride this season.
I mean, I actually think the Marvin Harrison thing hurts him. You mentioned like he was the only one there, and so yeah, they were just constantly feeding him targets over and over again.
And this
Like
will
I
be
think,
his 3rd season. Sorry, he was a rookie in 2022.
and so I think this makes it, potentially easier for him. But I just don't think he's going to have as many targets as he did last year. Like, you know, so I have him pretty much at the same spot he was a year ago. I don't see him moving up into that. You know, I think you guys had him top 3.
Yeah, I had him 3rd, and I think the big reason of that is once Zach Ertz, because he was sharing time with Zach Ertz last year, and then once he hit the IR, from weeks 8 on, he averaged over. I mean, it's hard to say over. He had like 6.6 receptions per game, 65 yards per game, and so it really once Murray was back, kind of ensconced in the role, he was one of his favorite targets. When you don't have any, then you're gotta find someone, and that was the guy. But I don't think they're gonna like remove him from the situation. Yeah, Marvin Harrison. And I think, and I've been skeptical in Harrison in terms of what he's going to do right away, or even as a full NFL season based on where I have him in my rankings. So, I mean, for McBride to be there, I think he can be a huge asset. He's going to be on the field all the time. I feel like, they have a good enough offense where his touchdowns are going to go up. So I feel like there's a lot of upside where some of the tight ends, once we start going down, upside isn't. In terms of just like what their situation is and so forth. So I don't know. I think there's something about what he did at the end of the year that kind of gets me excited for what this tight end can do. Because I mean, there's a lot of positive things about the Arizona offense that I'm kind of excited about. Todd, you want to say something about McBride?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well on that one because, like I said, I think having Marvin Harrison there, it's gonna help him, and what he did last year. I mean, only had 3 touchdowns, but I think he'll have a little bit more this year, just the way the offense will be.
All right, let's keep the tight end train rolling here. I'm just going to go by your rankings because I think we need to we have like 3 minutes and we'll probably do like 5 more minutes. But one guy that I really want to talk about, he's polarizing. He's someone we've, named a disrespectful category in terms of our awards at the end of the season. But like Kyle Pitts, he's in a situation now where he has a better quarterback. He's got a better offense. He's got a better coaches. Mikey's got him 4th. I got him 9th. Todd has him 17th. So not feeling the Kyle Pitts love this season. But Mikey, Kyle Pitts at number 4. You believe this is it?
Yeah, and it's different for me because I have never been a Kyle Pitts guy, ever. I've always been low on him, and I've been right to this point.
He had 1,000 yards in his first year.
Come on now. The reason
that's pretty good for a tight end rookie, I would say. But yeah, for the most part, yes, he's been disappointing.
The reason that I have him so high is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has provided some of the best, seasons for tight ends as a quarterback. Kirk Cousins loves tight ends. I mean, T.J. Hawkinson last year ranked second in targets among tight ends on average. He ranked first actually last year targets for tight ends, second the prior year. There was a year that Kyle Rudolph finished in the top 10. I could go back to his days in Washington, where, and you guys probably don't remember this, but there was a year in 2015 where Jordan Reed was the number one tight end in fantasy.
Oh, I remember Jordan Reed. He knocked me out of the playoffs when playing at him. I remember Jordan Reed for sure.
I remember.
So I am telling you, there is one thing that is foolproof when it comes to Kirk Cousins, is that his tight ends are going to do well. And so this sets up perfectly for Kyle Pitts this year. I think he's going to have an amazing year.
I'm just imagining the end of the season and he's disappointing again, what Mikey would say, because you were so anti Kyle Pitts, like most of us were very anti Kyle Pitts. I wonder if it's even possible for him to have a disappointing season based on what he has in front of him, unless there's an injury. But Kyle Pitts.
Unless there's an injury. That would be the way.
Pitts. I love it. I thought I had him high at 9, but Mikey is loving it. Pretty exciting stuff. Todd, you want to talk about Evan Ingram or George Kittle or Jake Ferguson? Anybody you want to talk about amongst that group?
I'm going to talk about Jake Ferguson. Obviously, he was the number 2 target last year. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb got all the, everything in between. But it's going to be interesting with Jake Ferguson this year because of this little, I don't know if everybody's been listening and watching, but there's this contract dispute going on. And, CeeDee Lamb, I mean, obviously, I think we can all agree that the deal is going to get done. But Jake Ferguson is the number 2 option in that offense. They have nobody else besides CeeDee Lamb. So I think, Jake Ferguson 5 touchdowns last year. Again, and this is all predicated on how the contract is going to go down with CeeDee Lamb. But if CeeDee Lamb does, misses some games, if things don't get resolved before week 1, guess what? Jake Ferguson going to be that number 1 option. I know, because I said, I don't know who else on that team, on that Cowboys offense, that you can tell me right now. I mean, okay, Brandon Cooks, but I think a few years ago we thought, oh, this is, because we always say, well, what's wrong with Brandon Cooks? So, would he be the number 1 guy? Jalen Tolbert. So to me, this is kind of again, I'm not comparing Jake Ferguson to Travis Kelce by any means necessary, but the volume might be there for Jake Ferguson to get that, depending on if CeeDee Lamb doesn't get resolved. I have Jake Ferguson ranked 6th, pretty high there. So I'm pretty high on Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's athletic as some of those guys, but in terms of like the top 5 or 6 guys. But yeah, volume is king, especially in the tight end position. I didn't mention Dalton Kincaid when I asked you guys. Can I be excited about Dalton Kincaid, Miguel? I mean, with guys like Curtis Samuel, Dawson Knox dealing with injury, Keon Coleman is their second, I guess their number 1, number 2, their second round draft pick. Can Kincaid be the number 1 and just put up stellar numbers this year? Like, I feel like I want to be on this hype train. He was the first tight end drafted in 2023. He was better when Knox wasn't in the lineup. He averaged just over 6 receptions and 50 yards. But with Diggs gone and Davis gone and the targets that are left behind, and there was one year I was excited about Curtis Samuel, and that failed miserably. So can Kincaid be that guy that can get a 20% target share, get 5 to 6 to 7 touchdowns, and be one of the top 5 tight ends? I want to be excited about him.
I think he can, and I think you should. I mean, Knox is already hurt.
Yeah.
I think it's not arguable that Kincaid is their top weapon right now. You don't know what you're going to get, out of the rookie. I don't think Shakir is going to – I don't think you could say he's a better option as a weapon than Dalton Kincaid. Like Kincaid kind of found his way in that second half of the year.
Yeah.
And became a real big weapon for Josh Allen. So if this team is going to have any chance, I think Kincaid has to be a really big option for Josh Allen and for the Bills.
Quickly, was Evan Ingram's season last year a fluke? 114 receptions on 143 targets. He had 41 receptions in 2022 and then went to 114 one season ago. Is that something we can expect again, or is that just something, it was a flash of lightning and we won't see it again?
I actually think it's real.
Think so?
I think he developed a real connection with Trevor Lawrence. Like you started to see it like budding at the end of the prior year. I remember, Joe had him at the end of the prior year, and like he was just tearing people apart with Evan Ingram in those last few weeks of 2022, and he just continued it, in 2023. I think I think it's real.
He scored 4 touchdowns all season, and 4 touchdowns came in the final 6 games. You want targets, even if I don't care if it's real, and I'm still trying to determine that. He's 29 years old. Touchdowns you'd love to have touchdowns, but I would love it if he put up 114 receptions and finished second. And neither of us have him in the top 2, but that is asking a lot. And it depends on anybody, your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. If you believe in him and he's going to take a step forward and be a top guy, or if you believe he's going to be the same old Trevor Lawrence. You could say he was the same Trevor Lawrence last year and he still gave him 114 receptions, but I don't know. I'm a little skeptical, but I would love for mine. What do I have him at as number 6? My number 6 tight end to give me 143 targets and 114 receptions. I would love it. Quickly on George Kittle. Yes or no, Todd? Do you like Kittle?
Yes, I do. I have him ranked 4th in my rankings. Still in a great offense. Enough said. He's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league. So,
Mikey, is he better without Ayuk? Should we be excited if Ayuk goes to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, because I think without Ayuk, he moves up in the pecking order. All of a sudden, he becomes the 3rd option instead of the 4th.
So there you go. We got to as many tight ends as we could. We didn't get to Brock Bowers or Taysom Hill. Those guys that have some upside and some chaos to it if you think about it. But that's kind of the tight end world. I'm a little excited about it this year. We did that mock draft and I waited on tight ends and I can't remember who I ended up with that. I don't remember who I ended up with. Oh, Ferguson. I think I ended up with Ferguson. I waited really, really late to get him, but that's just kind of how it goes. Todd, what's on next week's show?
Well, it's time. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. Bold predictions, sleepers, busts, and then after that, then it's draft day. So we're coming down the home stretch. So we'll see. What outrageous things we'll say. Probably I'll say the most outrageous things when it comes to predictions. But hey, it's entertaining.
Actually, we have a show before the draft.
Oh.
So that would be our draft. I called it our draft preview, mock draft, last minute thoughts. And then we have the draft, and then we have our draft recap show. So we're getting close. So next week, sleepers, bust, bowl predictions. Get excited to hear about who we think are going to outperform their average draft position and guys we think are just going to stink it up here in 2024. Guys, thanks for coming on late here on Tuesday, August 13th. But we're only a few weeks away. And we'll be drafting, and then we'll be watching some actual NFL football. I didn't realize there was a Friday game. Mike, you had to let me know that there was actually football on Friday. Awesome.
In Brazil.
In Brazil.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Packers and Eagles. So there you go.
Yeah. So if with Saquon or Jalen Hurts or Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown, might be fun stuff. All right. So that's going to do it for us here on the MHA podcast. Mikey Renault, Todd Diamond. I'm Eric Lansing. We'll see you next week right here